I stood there in the kitchen, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, my backpack slung over one shoulder, stuffed with nothing but a change of clothes and the Polaroid of Dad from before the cancer took him. Mom's voice cracked like thunder as she spat the words I dreaded since I first felt that pull toward boys instead of girls. "Get out, Jordan. You're no son of mine. Not like this." I was 18, fresh out of high school in that godforsaken corner of Ohio where cornfields stretched like accusations and the church steeple loomed taller than any dream. The call came on a Tuesday, 5 years to the day I'd slammed the screen door behind me, the echo still ringing in my ears like a bad country song. My phone buzzed on the nightstand in my cramped Chicago apartment, the screen lighting up with a number I hadn't saved but knew by heart. The one from Mom's landline. The one she'd used to call and hang up without a word for months after I left. I let it ring twice, my thumb hovering, heart pounding like it did that night in the rain. When I finally answered, her voice was a ghost, thin and trembling. "Jordan, baby, it's me. I need you. Please." I didn't hang up. God help me, I didn't. Instead, I sat up in bed, the city lights flickering through the blinds like distant stars mocking my resolve, and listened as she unraveled the life I'd imagined she'd built without me. She'd remarried 2 years after I left. Some roughneck named Carl from the auto plant. A man with fists like hams and a temper that made the neighbors whisper. The church ladies had fixed them up, said he was a good Christian man to fill the hole Dad left. But now, at 42, she was pregnant with his kid, 6 months along, and Carl's goodness had curdled into something darker. Bruises she hid under long sleeves. Nights she locked herself in the bathroom with the phone in one hand and a rosary in the other. "He's gonna hurt this baby, Jordan," she sobbed. The words I'd waited half a decade to hear twisted into this desperate plea. "I can't keep it safe here. But you're strong now. You could take her. Raise her right. Please, son. For me."
Son.
The word landed like a slap, reopening scars I'd thought scabbed over. I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked, memories flooding back. The way she'd burned my coming-out letter in the sink that night, the ashes swirling down the drain like my future. "You chose that life over family," she'd screamed, Carl looming in the doorway like a shadow with teeth. I'd hitchhiked to Chicago with $20 in my pocket, crashing on couches in Boys Town until I landed a barista gig at a queer coffee shop, the kind with rainbow flags in the window and tips that bought me my first real bed. That was where I met Josiah, 3 years ago, on a slow afternoon shift when the snow piled up outside and he wandered in, shaking flakes from his wool coat, his smile warm as the latte he ordered extra foam on. He was a painter, 25 to my 20, with skin like polished oak and eyes that held stories from the South Side he wouldn't share until our third date. We bonded over bad diner pie and worse exes. His a Wall Street type who'd bailed when Josiah's visa from Jamaica got complicated. Mine a ghost named Mom who'd traded love for Leviticus. Our first kiss was in Grant Park, cherry blossoms falling like confetti on a budget, his hands tentative on my waist as if afraid I'd vanish. "You're safe here," he'd whispered, and for the first time, I believed it. We moved in together last year, into the shoebox walk-up with leaky faucets and a fire escape that doubled as our balcony. He taught me to see beauty in the grit, the way the L train rattled like a heartbeat, the murals on alley walls screaming truths the suburbs silenced. Josiah was my anchor, the one who held me when nightmares of that trailer door slamming shut pulled me under. But now, with Mom's voice echoing in my ear, the walls felt like they were closing in. "Why now?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I meant. 5 years of radio silence, and suddenly I'm family again because you need a bailout? She went quiet, the line crackling with static or sobs. I couldn't tell. I was wrong, Jordan. So wrong. Carl. He changed me, made me forget who I was. But this baby, she's innocent. Like you were. Innocent. The word hung there, a lifeline or a noose. I glanced at the calendar on the fridge, marked with Josiah's gallery opening next month. Our anniversary circled in red. What would he say? What would I say to the kid who didn't ask for any of this? A sibling I never wanted, thrust into my arms like a penance. I hung up after promising to think about it, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I paced the living room, the floorboards groaning under my feet, replaying every what if. What if I'd fought harder that night? What if I'd stayed and let the church pray the gay away? Like the pamphlets she'd shoved at me. By dawn, the city was stirring. Horns blaring, vendors hawking coffee. And I was at the kitchen table, staring at a half-eaten bagel, when Josiah shuffled in, his locks tied back, wearing that ratty Cubs tee that smelled like turpentine and home. He didn't ask. He just poured me coffee, black as my mood, and sat across, his knee brushing mine under the table. Talk to me, love. His accent wrapped around the words like kudzu, soft and insistent. I spilled it all, the call, the baby, the ghosts I'd buried under takeout boxes and thrift store art. He listened, chin in hand, those eyes never leaving mine, and when I finished, he reached for my hand, thumb tracing the callus from steaming milk pitchers. This ain't about her, Jordan. It's about you. What do you want? What did I want? Forgiveness? Revenge? A family that didn't come with strings? The next week blurred into a haze of double shifts and dodged calls from Mom, her voicemails piling up like unpaid bills. Updates on the pregnancy, apologies laced with scripture, pleas that chipped at the ice around my heart. Josiah didn't push, but he started leaving books on the counter. Titles like The Family We Make and Queer Kinship in the Heartland. Subtle nudges toward a future we hadn't planned. We talked late into nights, tangled in sheets that smelled of him. About adoption dreams we'd whispered once over wine. About the nursery we could carve from the second bedroom stacked with canvases. Then came the betrayal, sharp as a switchblade in the gut. It was a Friday, 2 months after the call, and Mom was due any day. I'd booked a flight to Columbus, neutral ground, a motel room to hash it out with lawyers on custody. No Carl in sight. Josiah drove me to O'Hare, his hand on my thigh the whole way, promising to pick me up in 3 days. Call if you need me, he said at the gate, kissing me fierce enough to taste like forever. The plane touched down in drizzle, the Midwest flat and familiar, a landscape of regrets. She met me at the diner off I-71, the one with the neon sign that still buzzed "Eat" like a dare. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, her belly a taut drum under a faded floral dress, gray threading her hair like worry lines etched permanent. We hugged awkward, her perfume the same cheap lavender from my childhood, and over greasy eggs, she laid it out. Divorce papers filed, Carl's rages escalating, the baby. A girl, they'd named her Hope in utero, a casualty she couldn't abide. You'll be her guardian, she said, sliding a folder across the booth. Temporary till I get on my feet. But Jordan, I need to know you'll love her like your own. I nodded, throat tight, the words "I will" forming before I could stop them. Felt like absolution, or maybe just exhaustion. We spent the afternoon at her lawyer's, a no-nonsense woman in pearls who drafted the papers with the efficiency of someone who'd seen too many family implosions. By evening, we were back at the motel, sharing takeout Chinese on paper plates, the TV droning infomercials. That's when she dropped the bomb, casual as passing the soy sauce. Carl knows you're coming. He wants to meet you. Make peace, for the baby's sake. My fork clattered to the plate. Peace? After he stood there while you threw me out. Her face crumpled, but she pressed on, voice small. He's changed, Jordan. The pastor's counseling him. And I told him about you, about who you are. The air sucked out of the room. Told him, as if my queerness was a footnote, a flaw to forgive over coffee and catechism. Betrayal bloomed hot in my chest. Not just hers, but the ghost of that 18-year-old kid who'd believed family meant unconditional. You outed me? To him. I stood, chair scraping linoleum. After everything? She reached for me, tears spilling. I had to. For unity. For the baby. Unity. The word was poison. The same lie that had exiled me. I stormed out into the muggy night, the motel's vacancy sign mocking me, and drove the rental car aimlessly through corn-swept back roads, radio blasting Springsteen to drown the rage. My phone lit up, Josiah, sensing the storm from 500 miles away. Breathe, love. Come home. But home felt fractured now, a word I'd have to redefine around a squalling stranger. The climax hit like labor pains. 2 days later, in the sterile white of Mercy Hospital's maternity ward, Mom's water broke at dawn, a frantic call yanking me from a fitful sleep. I raced through traffic, horns blaring like accusations, arriving as they wheeled her down the hall, Carl trailing like a bad omen, his flannel shirt untucked, eyes bloodshot. He cornered me in the waiting room, the air thick with antiseptic and old grudges. "So you're the fairy boy," he sneered, voice low so the nurses wouldn't hear. "Think you can play daddy to my girl? Over my dead body." Fury ignited, years of silence fueling the fire. I shoved him hard, my fist connecting with his jaw before reason kicked in. Security swarming, Mom's screams echoing from delivery. They hauled him out in cuffs, domestic disturbance pinned on his history. Not my swing. But the damage was done. I paced the linoleum, knuckles split, heart a war zone. Josiah called then, his voice a lifeline across the static. "I'm on the next flight. Hold on, Jordan. You're not alone." Hope arrived at 3:17 p.m. A squirm of pink limbs and furious cries. 7 pounds of miracle and mess. Mom held her first, exhausted triumph in her eyes, then passed her to me, the weight foreign and fierce in my arms. "She's yours now," she whispered, and in that moment, looking down at those tiny fists flailing, I saw not just a baby, but a bridge, fragile but mine to build. Carl was gone, arrested for violation of the restraining order. His peace, a farce shattered like cheap glass. The betrayal lingered, a bruise that throbbed when Mom signed the papers that night, her hand shaking on the pen. "Forgive me?" she asked, voice breaking. I wanted to say no, to walk away clean, but the humanistic pull, the raw humanity of her regret, the child's unknowing eyes, held me. "Someday," I said instead, the word a seed planted in cracked soil. Josiah landed at midnight, sweeping into the room like sunlight, his arms enveloping us both, me, Hope, the chaos we'd claimed. He cooed at her in patois, fingers tracing her cheek, and later, in the quiet of the rental car heading back to the airport, he murmured, "We're a family now, yeah? The kind we choose." We flew home at dawn, Hope bundled against my chest, Mom's goodbye a tearful wave from the curb. Promises of visits, therapy, slow mending. Chicago greeted us with autumn chill, the skyline a jagged promise of reinvention. Our apartment transformed overnight. Canvases shoved to corners, a crib assembled from IKEA instructions and Josiah's steady hands. Sleepless nights blurred into a rhythm of bottles and burps, Josiah's lullabies mingling with my hesitant ones, our love deepening in the trenches of diapers and doubt. Months turned to a year, Hope's first steps taken on that fire escape, her laughter chasing away shadows. Mom came for holidays, tentative at first, then bolder. Thanksgiving with Josiah's jerk chicken. Her apologies evolving into stories of Dad. Unfiltered. The betrayal didn't vanish, but it scarred over. A reminder that grace isn't given. It's grown, messy and American as apple pie laced with regret. And us? Josiah and I, we married in a backyard ceremony last spring. Under a sky bruised purple like the bruises we'd both outrun. Hope toddled between us, flower crown askew, as we vowed the truest words. To build, to hold, to choose each other every damn day. In the heart of this sprawling, flawed country, we'd forged something unbreakable. A family not of blood alone, but of fierce, forgiven love. Looking back, that hospital hallway was the fulcrum, the moment the world tilted and righted itself on a razor's edge. But the real work, the bone-deep kind that reshapes you, started on the red-eye back to Chicago, Hope's tiny breath sinking with the hum of the engines, her warmth seeping through the blanket like a quiet revolution. Josiah sat beside me, one arm draped over the seat back, his free hand interlaced with mine, thumb stroking circles that said I've got you without a word. The flight attendant cooed over her, offering extra pillows and a knowing smile, the kind that said she'd seen queer families like ours bloom from harder soil. I nodded thanks, but my mind was a whirlwind, replaying Carl's sneer, Mom's trembling signature. The way Hope's cry had pierced the chaos like a siren's call to something better. We landed in a drizzle that mirrored my mood. The O'Hare bustle a welcome assault after the Midwest's suffocating hush. Josiah hailed a cab, juggling diaper bag and car seat like a pro, while I clutched Hope close, her lashes fluttering against my shirt. "First stop, home," he declared, voice bright as he buckled her in. Home. The word settled differently now, expanded to include this fierce little stranger who'd upended everything. Our apartment building loomed on the corner of Halsted and Belmont, a brick sentinel with fire escapes draped in holiday lights year-round, the kind of place where neighbors blasted salsa on weekends and left care packages for new parents. Inside, the air smelled of yesterday's curry and fresh possibility. Josiah had texted ahead to his best friend, Lena, a tattooed barista with a knack for nesting, and she transformed our spare room into a makeshift nursery. Walls splashed with her mural of whimsical animals in rainbow hues, a rocking chair salvaged from a stoop sale, stacks of onesies folded neat as origami. "Welcome home, Mama Bear," she teased, scooping Hope for a cuddle, her buzz cut tickling the baby's cheek. I laughed, the sound rusty but real, and for the first time since Mom's call, the weight on my chest eased a fraction. Those early weeks were a gauntlet, the kind that tests the seams of even the sturdiest love. Hope was colicky, her wails piercing the night like alarms, pulling us from sleep in tandem shifts. Me at 2 a.m., Josiah at 5, coffee our communion. I'd pace the living room, her against my shoulder, humming the Beatles tunes Dad used to belt in the truck, while Josiah sketched in the dim light, capturing her scrunched face on napkins that became our fridge gallery. "She's got your fire," he'd say, and I'd roll my eyes, but secretly, it thrilled me. The way her eyes, a stormy gray like mine, tracked his every move, as if she knew he'd be the steady one. Conflict simmered beneath the surface, though, bubbling up in quiet moments. One night, as thunder rattled the windows and Hope finally dozed in her bassinet, I broke. "What if I'm screwing this up?" I whispered, head in hands on the couch. "I'm 23, Joe. No degree, no savings. Just a barista gig and baggage heavier than this kid's luggage." He knelt before me, hands on my knees, his gaze unflinching. "Baggage? That's bullshit, Jordan. You've carried more than most twice your age. And this," he nodded toward the nursery, "this is us paying it forward. Not perfect, but real. Real. That's what Josiah brought to us. The unvarnished humanity that made our patchwork family sing. He was the one who enrolled us in a queer parenting group at the center downtown. A circle of folks like us. 2 dads from Pilsen with adopted twins. A non-binary parent navigating custody wars. There, amid folding chairs and lukewarm coffee, I shared my story for the first time. Not as victim, but survivor. The nods, the hugs, the Me Too-s. It was absolution in action. A reminder that America's underbelly held pockets of grace amid the grind. But Mom's shadow loomed. Her weekly calls a tightrope walk between reconciliation and resentment. She'd send photos, ultrasound throwbacks, now silly in hindsight, and updates on her new life. A studio apartment in Dayton. A job at the library shelving romance novels she devoured like contraband. "I'm reading the ones with the boys who end up together," she'd say, tentative laughter in her voice. "Makes me think of you and Josiah." I'd grunt responses, thawing slow, until one call, 3 months in, when she confessed the full betrayal. "I didn't just tell Carl. The church knew, too. They prayed for you exorcism style behind my back. I stopped going after that. For you. For her." The admission hit like aftershocks, rage flaring anew. I hung up mid-sentence, slamming the phone down hard enough to wake Hope, her cries a mirror to my turmoil. Josiah found me on the fire escape, rain mingling with tears, cigarette unlit between my fingers. A habit I'd quit but craved in crises. He didn't lecture. He just sat, shoulder to mine. The city sprawl below us a glittering testament to survival. "Hurt's part of it, love," he said finally. "But so's the healing. You don't owe her absolution, but you might owe yourself peace." Peace came in fragments. Hope's first gummy smile on a sunny afternoon in Lincoln Park, her chubby hands grasping dandelions as Josiah pushed the stroller, me snapping pics on my ancient phone. Or the gallery opening where he debuted a series inspired by us. Portraits of fractured families mending. Hope's face ethereal in oils, titled Chosen Blood. Critics raved, but the real win was Mom's text after beautiful. Like you. No apology, just truth, a step on the path. Yet drama lurked, as it does in lives rebuilt from ruins. Carl resurfaced 6 months post-birth. A letter forwarded from Mom's old address, scrawled in block letters on yellow legal pad. You stole my daughter, fag. I'll get her back. The threat chilled me, propelling us to lawyers in the loop. Affidavits stacked like armor. Josiah held vigil during depositions, his hand in mine under the table, while I recounted the hospital shove, Carl's slurs, the restraining order he'd violated thrice. The judge, a stern woman with a rainbow pin on her robe, granted full guardianship to me, citing irreparable risk. Her gavel a punctuation on our fragile peace. That night we celebrated small. Pizza on the floor, Hope gnawing a crust, Josiah's head on my lap as we watched The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy's rainbow a metaphor too on the nose to ignore. No place like home, he murmured, and I kissed his forehead, tasting salt of sweat and relief. But doubt whispered still, what if Carl fought dirtier? What if Mom relapsed into old patterns? The questions fueled late-night Google spirals, but Josiah grounded me, his art therapy sessions turning my sketches, crude lines of fear and hope, into something shared. As autumn deepened, leaves carpeting the sidewalks in gold and crimson, we carved our rhythm. Mornings at the coffee shop, me slinging lattes while Lena babysat. Afternoons with Josiah at his studio, Hope in a playpen amid paint-splattered dropcloths. Her babbles the soundtrack to creation. Romance wove through the mundane. A stolen kiss over dishwater suds. Slow dances in the kitchen to Al Green when she napped. It was the American dream, queered and hard-won. Not mansions and picket fences, but a walk-up with heart enough to hold us. Mom visited for Hope's first Halloween, arriving by Greyhound with a pumpkin onesie and tentative hugs. We took her to the parade in Andersonville, streets alive with drag queens and drag kings, floats bedecked in glitter and grit. Hope rode Josiah's shoulders, a tiny witch hat perched lopsided, while Mom trailed, eyes wide at the spectacle. "This is your world?" she asked, voice hushed with awe and ache. "Ours?" I corrected, linking arms with her, the gesture a bridge extended. We didn't speak of Carl or the church that night, just shared candy corn and stories. Hers of Dad's pranks, mine of Josiah's proposal under the bean. Ring a simple band etched with always. Betrayal's echo faded there, in the laughter of costumed chaos, replaced by a humanistic hum. Forgiveness not as erasure, but evolution. She left with promises to return for Thanksgiving, and I believed her, not blindly, but with the cautious faith of someone who'd learned to build from broken. Winter brought its own trials, snow blanketing the city in hush, but also joys. Hope's first snowman, lopsided and proud, Josiah's breath fogging as he photographed us, mittened hands intertwined. We hosted a solstice party, string lights twinkling against frost-laced windows, friends toasting to the family that fought for it. In the quiet after, as embers died in the hearth, I held Josiah close, Hope asleep between us, and whispered thanks. For him, for her, for the grace to start again. Spring unfurled like a promise kept, cherry blossoms rioting pink against the gray of lingering chill, and with it came the slow bloom of what we'd planted in pain. Hope turned 1 in April, a milestone marked not with fanfare but family. A backyard picnic at Lena's, picnic blankets spread under ancient oaks, the air sweet with barbecue and baby giggles. Mom flew in, her suitcase lighter but her smile heavier with intent, bearing a cake she'd baked herself. Chocolate with Hope's Day, piped in uneven frosting, a mother's love in every lopsided letter. We sang off-key, Josiah strumming a ukulele he'd bought on impulse, and as Hope smeared icing on my cheek, Mom's eyes met mine across the circle, brimming with unsaid sorries. That visit stretched to a week, her crashing on our couch, folding into our chaos like she'd always been there. We took her to the Art Institute, wandering galleries hand in hand, Hope in a carrier on Josiah's chest, pointing at Monets with pudgy insistence. Mom lingered at the American wing, tracing fingers over Hopper's lonely figures, her voice soft. This one's like us. Isolated, but reaching. It was the closest she'd come to naming the rift, and later, over deep dish at Pequod's, she opened the floodgates. I failed you, Jordan. Not just that night, but every day after. The church, Carl, they twisted me. But seeing you now, with her, with him, it's redemption I don't deserve. I chewed slow, the crust flaking like old defenses, and when I spoke, it was measured, laced with the emotion we'd both earned. It's not about deserving, Mom. It's about doing. Stay clean of that poison, the prayers, the judgments. Be grandma, not ghost. She nodded, tears carving tracks through her mascara, and we sealed it with a hug that smelled of flower and forgiveness, the kind that doesn't erase scars but honors them. Josiah watched from across the booth, his foot nudging mine under the table. A silent proud of you. He was the romance in our narrative, the steady pulse amid the drama. The one who surprised me with weekend getaways to the Indiana dunes. Hope building sandcastles while we walked the shore. Waves lapping secrets at our feet. Remember when you thought you were alone? He'd say, wind whipping his locks, and I'd pull him close, kissing salt from his lips, murmuring, never again. But life, that great American storyteller, doesn't tie bows without tugging threads. Carl's shadow resurfaced in summer, a court summons arriving like a snake in the mail. Petition for visitation, backed by a slick lawyer claiming, reformed father. The betrayal stung fresh, his audacity a slap to the fragile peace we'd stitched. Nights dissolved into strategy sessions, Josiah poring over case law on his laptop while I rocked Hope, her innocent coups a stark counterpoint to the venom in his filings. He's got priors, our attorney assured. A bulldog named Ramirez with tattoos peeking from his cuffs. We'll bury him. The hearing was in Cook County, a cavernous courtroom smelling of polished wood and desperation, fluorescent lights humming like nerves. Carl slouched at the plaintiff's table, bulked up from jail time, his gaze boring into me as I took the stand. He called me a fag. I stated, voice steady despite the quake in my gut, recounting the hospital melee, the threats. Mom testified next, her hands clasped white-knuckled, voice cracking as she detailed the bruises, the rages, the night he'd smashed the crib in a blackout drunk. I chose my son and my granddaughter over him, she said, the words a climax of her own redemption arc. Josiah sat in the gallery, Hope on his lap, her thumb in mouth as if sensing the storm. When the judge denied the petition, permanent no contact, therapy mandated for any future whiff of custody. I exhaled a breath I'd held since 18, the gavel's crack a catharsis. Carl lunged, snarling, but bailiffs swarmed, dragging him out in a flurry of shouts. Outside, in the plaza's spray of fountains, Josiah enveloped me, Hope between us, her laughter bubbling like the water. It's over, he whispered, and for once, I believed it. That victory propelled us forward, the conflict resolving into a humanistic harmony we'd fought tooth and nail for. Mom moved closer that fall, renting a one-bedroom in Evanston, close enough for Sunday dinners but independent. A balance we all craved. She volunteered at the library's story hour, reading to tots with voices that enchanted Hope, who called her Ma with a lisp that melted us. Josiah's career crested too, a solo show in Soho Drawing Scouts. But he turned down the New York offer, citing roots deeper than asphalt. Instead, he opened a community studio in Uptown, teaching free classes to queer youth, kids like I'd been, sketching dreams on borrowed paper. Our love deepened in the dailies. Anniversaries marked with rooftop stargazing, Hope's questions about why two daddies. Met with Josiah's tales of Jamaica's Blue Mountains and my Ohio fields, weaving a tapestry of origins. Romance wasn't grand gestures but the quiet ones. A note in my lunch bag, you make the ordinary epic. His hand on the small of my back as we navigated parent-teacher nights. Emotion ran high, of course. Flashbacks on rainy nights, Mom's apologies revisited in therapy we attended as a unit. But it fueled us, turning pain to purpose. By Hope's second birthday, we'd bought a fixer-upper in Logan Square. A brownstone with creaky stairs and a yard begging for swings. funded by Josiah's sales and my promotion to manager. The closing was a blur of paperwork and hugs, Mom toasting with sparkling cider. To new beginnings, we moved in Memorial Day weekend, neighbors pitching in with coolers and playlists, the block party spilling into dusk with fireworks cracking like applause. The most dramatic scene etched in my memory? Not the hospital birth, but that first night in the new house, boxes half unpacked, Hope asleep in her big girl room with stars painted on the ceiling. Josiah and I stood on the porch, city lights winking distant, his arm around my waist as thunder rumbled low. "We did it," I said, voice thick, "from kicked out to this." He turned me, cupping my face, eyes reflecting the storm. "And we'd do it again. For her. For us." The kiss that followed was slow, profound. A vow renewed amid the patter of rain, the world vast and waiting. In the end, it's not the betrayals that define us, but the bridges we burn or build. Ours is the latter. A family forged in the fire of American grit, laced with romance's glow and emotion's edge. Hope grows wild and wise. Mom mends her fractures. Josiah paints our truths. And me? I'm whole, narrating this life not as tragedy, but triumph. The gay kid from Ohio who claimed his kin, one forgiven heartbeat at a time.